Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our speaker today is Florence Hudson, who is the Executive Director of the Big Data Innovation. She will also talk about her own personal background and how she became the important individual that she is currently. Over to you, Ms. Hudson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Durbach, and I'm really delighted to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Durbach and Susie. It's really great to meet all of you, even though virtually. So we're going to talk today about leveraging data science and advanced technologies for good. Like with anything, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. And so we're going to go for good. And as you heard, I'm Executive Director of the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub at Columbia University. And I have my own consulting firm that does advanced technology and diversity and inclusion consulting around the world. A little bit more about what I do, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this, that I actually chair a working group, which is a couple of hundred people working together from around the planet, that's co-sponsored by IEEE, which stands for the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers. And we make technical standards like you may have heard of Wi-Fi standards, 802.11, we make all those things. And so we're creating a new standard working with Underwriters Laboratories on clinical Internet of Things, data and device interoperability with TIPPSS. And TIPPSS is a standard that we've been developing since 2016. I kind of coined it with some friends of mine from IEEE and NSF, the National Science Foundation. It stands for trust, identity, privacy, protection, safety, and security. And the reality of life now is that there are many connected devices, and they're pretty much all hackable, including medical devices, cars, all sorts of things. And so what we're doing is developing technical standards that will reduce the risk associated with using those devices. I also am on the National Cancer Institute, a Computational Approaches for Cancer Program Committee in the US. And what we do is we actually work with researchers around the globe to bring together people who are really good at algorithms and computing with the medical professionals and healthcare researchers, and we bring them together to attack cancer, to try to come up with new ways, new patterns, new anomaly recognition, new techniques to actually identify cancer and hopefully treat it. And God willing, someday eradicate it. That'll take a long time. I'm a board member. I've been a corporate board member. I'm looking for new corporate board member opportunities. I'm on academic and nonprofit boards. And as you heard, I was a VP and a chief technology officer at IBM, a senior VP and a chief innovation officer at Internet 2, and worked for the NSF Cybersecurity Center of Excellence at Indiana University and at NASA and Grumman as an aerospace engineer. So I've done a lot of things, but I've had a long time to do them. so that's a little bit about me that provides some context. And what I'd encourage you to do is think about, what will this slide look like with your picture on it in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? What do you want to do? And so think about that. So one of the things I love to do when I'm speaking with students and younger people is to show you a little bit about my life. You know, one of the things I always say is that we all have speed bumps in our lives. And my speed bump was day one. My mother actually died at childbirth. She died when I was born. My father left. I never met him. And I bring this up because if you look at what I've done, you could think like, oh, look at all of this. She had all of these benefits. Well, I started out as an orphan, right? And so I want everyone to realize that we all have speed bumps in life, and you get to decide if you're going to be a victim or if you're just going to bring it with you and keep going. And I do plan B. I do just deal with it and keep going. Always look over your shoulder and realize where you've been, but keep on going. Don't let it stop you. So these are the things that are important to me. This is my life on one chart, one slide. And so family and faith in the top left corner, actually, and those are my brothers and my sister, who were really my uncles and my aunt when I was born, because my grandparents legally adopted me after my mother died and my father left. So I call them my brothers and my sister. They're really my uncles and my aunt. And actually on the left is my brother Charlie, who passed away last year. So this is hard to talk about. But it was really wonderful having them in my life and having people to love me. I could have known nobody, if I was just an orphan. Faith is very important to me. Everybody, some people are into it, some people aren't. If you love it, go for it. And these are some of the best friends in my life, my IBM best friends and my mentor. Actually, Zen Jha, this young man just reached out to me this morning. I used to mentor him when he was at Princeton. We were both aerospace and mechanical engineers from Princeton, many years apart, and we still keep in touch and I still mentor him. And then these are some pictures I like to call my Florence Gump pictures. There's a movie that was out a number of years ago called Forrest Gump. And if anybody gets a chance to watch it, it's really fun. Forrest Gump with Tom Hanks. And Forrest used to jog a lot. And so he had all these pictures of like really famous people. And people would say, Forrest, how did you get these pictures? And he said, I just keep running. And so that's what I do. I just keep running. So this is Hillary Clinton. She was Secretary of State in the US. We spoke on a panel together. This is Sonia Sotomayor. She is a US Supreme Court Justice. She went to Princeton like I did, a Nobel laureate. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, Professor Kahneman from Princeton. And then these are some of my mentees. I mentioned Zen. And so he is a daddy now. He's married and he's working out in California. This is Mariah. And I met Mariah when she was an incoming freshman at Princeton. And I was so enamored by her. I was really impressed. She wanted to be an engineer or a computer scientist. And women have a tough time, and people of color, in some of these environments, in the STEM fields, they call them. And so I looked at her and thought, she's going to go through things that she has no idea about yet. And I know some of them because I'm a woman too. So I told her, Mariah, if you decide to go to Princeton, I'll mentor you for the rest of your life. So anyway, she did. And so this is her at graduation 4 years later. And the same with Zen. And I still mentor him. So you can actually mentor people younger than you. You could be in college, you could be a young professional, you could meet a young person in your family or your neighborhood, and you can mentor them too and help them through life. Then I was an aerospace engineer, so I tend to know astronauts. So this is Sally Ride, the first female astronaut in the US. This is Mae Jemison, the first US African-American female astronaut. Bonnie Dunbar, another one. This is the first astronaut I met. This is Alan Bean. This is when I was graduating from high school and I won a Grumman scholarship. And then here's me and Sally again with my daughter. This was my mentor when I was at Princeton, Yvonne Brill. She passed away a few years ago. This is her getting a medal from President Obama. And then this is me with her and her daughter. And she was my mentor since I was at Princeton. And in her obituary in the New York Times, it actually called her the first female rocket scientist in the United States. How cool is that? So these are people I met along the way that really inspired me. So think of the people that inspire you and help you get where you're going. So now to the heart of the matter. Let's talk about data for good. So I'm executive director of this Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub, which is a program that's funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation. We were first funded in 2015 when I was on the advisory board and the steering committee. Then 2 years ago, they asked me to run it. So here I am. We're funded by not just NSF, but we just got our first award from the National Institutes of Health. We initially focused on these 9 little states in the United States, but now our reach is actually very global. We have over 6,000 people around the planet involved with the hub, and you're all invited to join us. We do a lot of virtual events. So our job is to be a community convener, a collaboration hub, and a catalyst for data science innovation in the Northeast region and then around the world, the way I look at it. We work very hard to amplify successes and share credits across the community so that we're not taking credit for any of this. We're validating the students, the professors, the researchers, the academics. You are all that are doing all this great work. And then we put it as success stories on our website. We have people present on webinars like this. And we're very focused on building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. We do a lot of outreach to underserved students and communities where they don't have data science education or people can't afford to go to school. And we provide online free education resources. So our 4 focus areas are education and data literacy, teaching people about how to use data, health in many different angles. I'll tell you about that. urban to rural communities, including, pollution, water management, all sorts of things. And then responsible data science, which includes security, privacy, and ethics. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. First, as I was mentioning, just to give you a feel for the Big Data Hub, we actually have over 6,400 individuals and 1,200 organizations that we work with across all 50 US states and 44 other countries, and you're welcome to join. These are some of the projects I'm going to talk about today. And I'm just going to jump right into them. But if you go to anybigdatahub.org/about, you can learn about any of them. So first, the education data literacy space. A year and a half ago, I took this job about 2 years ago, and I looked around and I said, you know what? There are a lot of people that don't even know data science is a thing. And there's so many jobs available in this space, and it's going to keep growing. The amount of data is growing. The tools we can use to manage the data, to analyze the data, to get insights out of the data are growing. And some people don't even know that. So we did a call for participation and asked people to be part of a founding committee for, actually at the time it was a Northeast Student Data Corps. We had 24 people say yes. We went, well, sounds like a good idea. And we started this program, which now has over 3,000 people in it. So we also created a data science resource repository. All of this is open and free, available all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week. We have people in Africa and Australia using it, all over. And so in our data science resource repository, we bring together resources that people can use to learn about data. We also have a number of student volunteer opportunities, and you'll see these blue boxes that I have on some of the slides. And we accept volunteers from all over the planet, and I'll show you how to sign up to be a volunteer. So you could volunteer for some of these programs to participate in them. So when we developed this Northeast Student Data Corps, and then it became national, and it's community developed. So we have professors, we have undergraduates, we have grad students, we have industry people, and we all work together to create this opportunity to learn data science. So we have a content and pedagogy team that puts together the content for the curriculum for what you're learning in data science. We have a peer instructor and mentoring team, students that actually create videos so other students can watch them to learn data science. And then we have an outreach team that helps us do our events. So when we first started this, it was just in this cute little Northeast region in the United States. And now this is how big we are, 3,000 people around the globe and still growing. So if you would like, you could actually join or volunteer with this National Student Data Corps. I talked a little bit about the data science resource repository. We have a video library, which I'll show you a little bit more about, with videos that students create for other students to watch. If you know any of these terms in data, there's something called SQL, or structured query language. There's something called R, the letter R, that's a tool that you can use. And then we have some advanced topics as well. We also have a data science panel series, and our next one is going to be in October, and then we'll have one in November. The October event is going to be to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month here in the United States, but everybody is invited. And we're going to have panelists that are Hispanic or from Hispanic heritage. We also have a mentoring program, and we have a Slack channel that you could join. We have over 500 people in that program. You can find a mentor, be a mentor to learn data science. This is all about data science mentoring. And if you'd like to volunteer for any of these opportunities, you could record data science videos. We actually have material that's already scripted from IBM in their Open Data Science for All content on GitHub. We actually have other resources you can bring together in the data science resource repository. You could write a blog post about one of our webinars, and you could also be involved in use cases for data science and learn how to use data and do data science. So this is an overview of some of the resources you would find in the National Student Data Corps, or NSDC. We have Learner Central, and behind each of these areas are a number of classes between, I would say, 5 and 15 in each one of these. We have data science ethics, including a comic book series that I'll show you a little bit more about. Getting started, you don't have to know anything. This is if you don't know math, you don't know algebra, that's okay. You see it says prerequisites none. So you can go in here and start learning all this on your own. Intro to intermediate, including linear algebra and data wrangling, and then intermediate to advanced, all the way to supervised machine learning, if you've heard of that before. But you can go at your own pace. There's no rush. You pick what you like. And it could be that you take one of these little classes online or read something and say, wow, that's really cool. Let me see if I can find a class near me. And you could go to school for it. We have in the video library we were talking about, we have examples like Introduction to Data Science, Data Acquisition and Wrangling, Supervised Machine Learning, and all of these videos were recorded by students. And so you have the opportunity to get involved in that as well. And then we have Educator Central. So not only are the students not able to get data science education, some of the educators, the teachers, aren't teaching data science yet, and they're not sure where to start. So what we have here is we have examples of real data science classes at universities like the University of Rochester, Columbia University, Berkeley, MIT, the missing semester, and also from community colleges, smaller schools like Queensborough Community College. All these materials are available open and online all the time. Then there's career development, and we also have chapters. We had a student in Philadelphia in the United States who said, could I have a chapter? And we were like, sure, let's figure it out. So we created this chapter program, and now we have 14 NSDC chapters around the world. They're located at higher ed institutions, but they could be in a community. And 6 of them actually are in India, and 8 of them are in the US, and we're open to having them anywhere around the planet. We also have a Career Central. You could look for jobs in data science. We actually have Volunteer Central, and this is where our real volunteer program is. And that stands for Research Experience and Leadership Opportunities. So if you were to go here and click and say, I want to volunteer, you could get involved in COVID research. You could get involved in data science research. You could be a co-moderator of a panel. You could be facilitating the questions and answers and have leadership experience in a global webinar like this. There are all sorts of cool opportunities. And what we like to do is listen to what the community wants, how you want to grow in data science, and then help you find ways to do that. As we say sometimes, to be the wind beneath your wings as you fly. In our data science resource repository, we also have resources for educators and for students. We even have a comic book series, and these are data science comic books. These are not like Spider-Man. These are about data science, artificial intelligence. They're available in Spanish, Portuguese, French, and English. And they're various data science topics, learning from data, all about that bias, bias and ethics. And this one's my favorite: who lives, who dies, who decides. Artificial intelligence and machine learning can actually be created with bias in it, because humans are creating it, right? So depending on who's designing it, it could actually be biased. So what you want to do is always understand how the data science, how the machine learning algorithms are really working, what data you're using, what data you left out, and how you're going to make sure that what you're doing is fair. And you've probably heard some of the stories about autonomous or self-driving vehicles, and how if it's driving itself, and I know I was in a Tesla recently, and there was a person driving it, but it was kind of trying to drive itself. And it was like we were getting to a green light and it was braking. I said, what's going on? And he said, oh, the car always thinks that that bush is a person. I'm like, oh, well, if it thinks the bush is a person, would it think a person is a bush? That's a problem, right? And so you really have to make sure that you're vetting all of this and always improving it. We're seeking more resources in Spanish. We actually have a large Spanish-speaking population and the hub and our global community. We have about out of the 6,500 people working with the hub, we have about 1,000 that are in what we call in the US minority serving institutions, which are African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, and 60% of that community is actually Hispanic. And so we like to add resources in Spanish, and I'll show you examples of that. So if you speak Spanish and you know of any data science resources, we'd love to know about them so we could put them on our website. So anywhere that you are, whether you're learning data science, whether you're in school or not, whether your school has a data science program, you could create an NSDC chapter. Because the ideas behind the chapters is to create a community of support. It could be students, it could be professionals. It started as students, but we're open to having it go farther than that. And the goal of the chapter is to enable data science education. So you could do like watch parties and watch the videos or something like that. Or you can find people to do some hands-on training, community development within your school and in the broader community, maybe reaching out to the younger students and having them join a meeting so that they can learn about data science. Project-based collaboration, and we have data sets that you can use to do data science projects, and internships and career opportunity enablement, either local job opportunities or the ones I mentioned in Career Central. And these are the chapters we have here on the left. I think this is pretty current. I think there are two new ones actually. UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles just started a chapter, and we have one other one that just began. So we have a bunch of chapters, and we're happy to invite others to do a chapter. It doesn't cost you anything. We help you, get you all set up, and then we keep in touch and help you make it what you want it to be. And then you get this little certificate you can put on your website or whatever. We also have mentoring, as I was mentioning. So you could go to anybigdatahub.org/NSDC, the National Student Data Corps website, and join our Slack channel. And there you could get mentoring. We bring professionals in. It could be that a grad student could mentor a younger student or a less experienced student. We have people from all ages. We have 10 or 12-year-old people, we have 50-year-old people, we have everything in between that are looking to learn data science, and we help everybody. So if you'd like to be a mentor or a mentee, you could actually get involved in that as well, going to this website or these bit.lys if you're taking a screenshot of it. Our data science panels are to feature students and professionals from academia, industry, nonprofits, government, and they share their experiences learning and using data science. So the students talk about, why did I go into data science? How hard is data science? How is statistics? What do I do next? And the professionals talk about their journeys in data science. When did they know they love data? When did they get involved in it? Why did they do it? What do they do with the data? And so we have these every month or two, and we have actually most of these people are students, and then there's me. So, and our program coordinator, Emily. Haley just graduated from Columbia, and this is another student that was volunteering with us. And you could join these panels, you can listen in on them, or you could volunteer to help out as either writing a blog or facilitating the question and answering. It's really a lot of fun. So as you can see, we do a lot in education data literacy. Now I want to go into a few of the other areas that we focus on. One is the health focus area, which I'm very interested in. So one of the big programs we have is the Covet Information Commons. And this is another award that we got from the National Science Foundation. They gave us $200,000 in 2020 when COVID started and said, hurry up and create a website. We're like, okay, well, hurry up. We created it. And then they said, can you keep it going and help it grow? So we did. And so now it has over 8,000 NSF and NIH, National Institutes of Health Awards in it. We also have had global connected healthcare cybersecurity workshops. And we also work with projects like the Exposome Data Warehouse and actually help startups start out as well. So the COVID Information Commons began in 2020 when COVID first hit the entire planet. And they asked us to create one simple place where people could go and find all the awards related to COVID research that were funded by the US National Science Foundation. When they first called us, there were 32. I went on the website and there were only 32. Now we have over 8,000 and we've added the National Institutes of Health. We do webinars every month or two. The next one is October 4th. You could go to covidinfocommons.net and click on events and you could sign up for that. It's free, open around the planet. We also record all the webinars, and those are available on the website as well. And we have 3 to 8. At the beginning, we would have 8 researchers present because they were just starting their research. So they hadn't really done anything yet. So they would talk for 5 to 7 minutes about, this is what I plan to do. Now they've done their research. Pardon me. And so we actually have 111 Researcher Lightning Talk videos, which have also been transcribed into written English. So if it's easier for you to read it in English, and they've also been translated into written Spanish. So you could look at them and or listen to them in any way that's most appropriate for you. We also have a lot of data sets and groups and guides. And there's information, it grows every month. We always bring in the new awards coming in from NSF and NIH. So we have about 2,200 people in the community now, and we've had over 8,000 people either participate in the webinar or watch the recording afterward. As I mentioned, we transcribe the video into written English, and we also translate it into Spanish. Ooh, wait a second. So here's an example of one that was done in Spanish. Let me just go back here. And so you can see English and Spanish. We also have researcher profiles. The researchers give us the information. This is Peter Rose. It includes his institution, which is the University of California, San Diego, his email ID, his ORCID ID. ORCIDs are free to get. You could get one if you want. And it's a 16-digit, they're always very long, a 16-digit number. And at your ORCID, you can put in your publications, things that you've done, where you've worked, your research links. So this is the ORCID ID is used a lot by researchers, and you could get one. As I said, they're free. We also linked the research output, and he also talks about collaboration opportunities. This is under the umbrella of what we call the FAIR data principles, FAIR, that we want to make the information findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Because when researchers can find other people's research, then they can build upon it. They don't have to do the same thing all over again. They can learn and grow. We also have tools on the Covet Information Commons, like this Machine Learning Explorer tool. It will go into the Covet awards that we have on the corpus, on the Covet Info Commons, we call the KIC, and you can actually look at it by location. It's US awards at this point. So you could, as an example, say the state of Texas, and then Nora Garza, who was the person who you may have seen the transcripts were about, and you can see the area of her research. If you're Nora, you could go in here and then say, ooh, who are these other people? It looks like I was clustered into similar research categories as they are in, so maybe I should reach out to them. So it enables researcher collaboration. I also do work in blockchain, which is also known as distributed digital ledger technology, or DLT. And so blockchain, for those who, a lot of people, when they hear blockchain, they think cryptocurrency, which is one of the applications of blockchain, but that's not where I focus. Blockchain allows you to provide data sharing between different organizations and nodes where there's no central authority. So there's no like big person in the sky that's responsible for all these different organizations, but they still want to share their data. Blockchain or distributed ledger technology lets you do that. So blockchain makes people think of how you can do this data sharing more broadly, but it also helps us think about how we're going to maintain security, because blockchain is not the most secure platform right now. But if you start combining the idea of blockchain with new technologies like quantum technology, there's a professor I work with at Washington University in St. Louis, Shantanu Chakraborty, and he has this very cool technology that has quantum tunneling timers in it. Very cool. So if you go to this YouTube, you can actually watch us talk about it. We do a little fireside chat. And we did that as part of my role on the editorial board for Blockchain and Healthcare Today. So what you probably can tell is that I try to take new advanced ideas and bring them to people, make it more consumable, make it more available so more people can learn about it and use these advanced technologies and data for good. I also mentioned we have this Global Connected Healthcare Cybersecurity Workshop series. Once again, this is all available online, and these videos are all on demand now. We did this in 2021. We have speakers from Europe, from Asia, from the US, from South America, Canada. We had Global Connected Healthcare Cybersecurity Risks and a roadmap of how to get out of the risks, privacy, ethics, and trust, data and device identity, connected healthcare integrated systems, because all this stuff has to work together, not just your little insulin pump, but how does this all work together? And then cybersecurity technology and policy. And so it's a very interesting series. We actually had a student who was working for me at the time at Columbia. She's graduated now and she's working at Tesla, but she actually wrote up the record. She took notes during the recordings and she wrote up blog posts and reports afterwards. So you could read like a 2-page synopsis of any of these events going to this IEEE website. So now let's talk a little bit about these other advanced technologies. I have like another 5 or 10 minutes. Now, these advanced technologies are really exciting. They enable digital transformation, especially in connected healthcare, but they can also increase risk. All these cute little Internet of Things devices, all of these has at least one, if not more, attack surfaces. Blockchain is not the most secure technology on the planet. Machine learning can have bias. Big data can be accessed. Artificial intelligence needs to be used in a good way. And so these bring a lot of value, but there's also a lot of risk. One of the areas that I like to think about is precision medicine and precision healthcare. And connected healthcare data and device interoperability can enable precision healthcare and precision medicine. So what does that mean? Well, when it's very precise, the idea is that they have enough information about you, about your environment, about your family, about your health, they can actually make better recommendations and decisions about your care. So they get information from connected healthcare devices and data. They could be wearables, patient lifestyle and environmental data. Are you a jogger? You're having problems breathing? Were you just somewhere where they're having wildfires? Clinical care data when you're in a doctor or medical facility, genomic data, and clinical and fundamental research data. We're always learning from research and we'd like to apply it for good. So increased connectivity is great, but it can bring increased risk. So what could possibly go wrong? All these little devices are hackable. So this is an insulin pump, and this is a friend of mine, Jay Radcliffe, who actually hacked his own insulin pump a number of years ago. And then there are actually pacemakers that were recalled in 2019 by the US Food and Drug Administration because there were 465,000 pacemakers recalled due to hacking fears. Hackers could reprogram the devices. They were exploitable with adjacent access at a low skill level. Adjacent access is like within 10 meters of you. That's not that far. Think of when you're in a crowd or at a cinema or anywhere. There are a lot of people within 10 meters of you. So a lot of these devices had to be recalled and they had to improve the security. And large scientific devices can be hacked as well. I work a lot with researchers who have very big, one-of-a-kind devices like telescopes and all these other things. And they would say, oh, who would want to hack my device? There's only one on the planet. Well, there was something called the Neutron star collision a few years ago that was discovered that was going on out in space. And in Western Australia, the scientists there were trying to get the server to move their telescope to point in the right direction, and somebody hacked the server. So they're waiting their entire lives for this neutron star collision, and they couldn't aim the telescope at the collision. So they had to drive out there and then fix it. And then it wasn't too late, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. So all of this is hackable, and we really have to understand that. So what we have to do is make sure that we're keeping the devices, the data, and the humans safe. As we enable interoperability, we need to protect the devices, data, and the humans. So my top concerns are connected healthcare devices and data, because if it gets hacked, they can quickly kill you, very honestly. Hospitals, campuses, and then next is going to be vehicles. And we think all the way at the technical level, the hardware, the firmware, the software, and the service level. I'm happy to talk more about that. So TIPPSS is the new cybersecurity paradigm. As we talked about, trust, allowing only designated people and services to access the device or the data. Identity, validating the identity of the people, the services, and the things. Do I really want you getting into my data or device? Privacy, ensuring the device and the personal and sensitive data are kept private. Protecting the devices and the users from harm, physical harm, digital harm, financial or reputational harm. Safety for devices, infrastructure, and people, and security. All of these are very important. So we're building standards around this. There have been a number of our articles that I've done over the years, enabling trust and security, tips for IoT. This was in 2018. Wearables and medical interoperability, once again. And we have this global working group and anybody can join. Once again, it's free. You would just have to email me or go to this website at IEEE and you can join us. We have technologists, we have students, we have payers, insurance companies, we have providers, people who provide care, regulators, pharmaceutical companies, all sorts of people. We have over 250 people involved from 22 countries and 6 continents, so that can include you. We also write books about this. I'm editor-in-chief for a couple of books from Springer Nature. Women Securing the Future with Tips for Connected Healthcare just came out in June of this year, and Women Securing the Future with Tips for IoT, or the Internet of Things, came out in 2019. They're all available through Springer. Depending on what institution you're in, if you're at a higher ed institution, a university or a college, they might have a deal with Springer. You might be able to download the ebook for free, so you could find out. And if you wanted to, you could contact me and invite an author to present in your class, virtually. We would love to teach you more about it. Another area we work on is urban rural communities, like in smart cities and transportation, safe water. These are all areas that are of interest to us, and we work with different partners to help us work on them. And all of this, as you were listening to this, if you're working with the Sustainable Development Goals, hopefully you were thinking, oh, these programs align with the UN SDGs. Very interesting, right? So we talked about good health and well-being. We talked about quality education. We talked about equality, clean water, sustainable cities, reducing inequalities, giving everybody access, industry innovation and infrastructure, life on land, urban to rural communities, and all the partnerships we have. So we're really delighted that we get to work on all these things, and they actually align pretty well with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we invite you all to participate, learn more, go to the Big Data Hub website, go to the Covet Info Commons website, sign up for our newsletters, join an event, or if it's not a good time for you, you can watch them on YouTube afterward, apply to be a volunteer, and we hope we get to see you again soon. And that's what I wanted to share today.
Thank you very, very much for really a brilliant presentation on scientific data research and application. And it's interesting that as you were talking, I was thinking about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you pretty much checked on most of them. I don't think that you missed any. I would have to review again, but certainly you are very much in sync in what the UN is trying to do. Right now they have, as you know, they have a big problem they are working on, but basically all of us are enabled to teach our students and interns, and we have an internship program in the UN about the Sustainable Development Goals. So your presentation was just excellent, and I'm very, very glad that you were able to come and make it. And now, because we have a lot of questions, I will turn over the floor to Susie so that she can ask you the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durbach, and thank you so much, Florence. I was definitely blown away by your presentation and felt very inspired, as I'm sure many of the students are, as a ton of questions have come in. So we'll try to go through them as quickly as we can. So the first question is, you authentically shared some challenges you dealt with earlier in life. So what advice do you have for those dealing with challenges? Some dialing in from Ukraine, where their worlds are being turned upside down by the war with Russia, and others dealing with their own personal struggles. So any advice you have of how they can focus on bettering the world around them, pursuing their passions the way you have throughout your career amongst all of these challenges?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And my heart goes out to all of you who are dealing with all these forces that you can't stop yourself. And as I was mentioning, it's very hard not to feel victimized, especially when there's, physical issues, psychological issues, all sorts of things going on. But what I just keep saying is just keep going. Just keep going. And you take everything with you. Like I said, you look over your shoulder like, oh man, look at that I just went through. But then you lean forward and you figure out where you're going to go. Decide how you're not going to be a victim, but that you're going to rise above it. whatever it is. And sometimes it's just believing in yourself. I know when I was at IBM, and I work a lot with women in technology, because, often people think that we can't do technical stuff. I'm an aerospace engineer, rocket scientist, but still I have to write books in women in engineering and science so they know we understand it. And, sometimes you just have to believe in yourself. And we came up with this little thing called I Believe in Me, IBM, I Believe in Me. And we created a podcast series. And they were little 2 or 3 minute podcasts. This was probably about 15 years ago at this point. And it was global. And I had like women from China reaching out and saying, I download a podcast every morning on my way on the bus to work, and I listen to it to be inspired. And so always try to think of, believing in yourself and how you can move forward. Sometimes speed bumps just keep coming one after the other. Look at what's going on in Ukraine. Every time you feel like you got the others out of there they are again, right? It's like, for people who haven't had to go through something like that, if you go to the ocean and you go in the water and a wave crashes and you're down in the suds, and you get up and another wave crashes and you get up and another wave crashes before you can even get your breath. Sometimes life feels like that. So what you have to do is get your breath, get your bearings, stand up, whatever that means. Like,
what led you to pursue your career path? And I think you kind of sparked some interest among the attendees, as some are asking if they're interested in going into data science, engineering, tech. Is there demand for these types of jobs? And kind of what was your thought process as you chose this career?
Yeah, so I've always been a geek, as we call it. I've always loved information and technology and science. I remember when I was a little girl, I was like 3, and somebody brought over this little transistor radio. Doctor, you might remember transistor radios. I don't know if anybody else does, but I had this cute little radio, and I took it apart, and they were like, oh my gosh, like, that's okay, I can put it back together. So I've always loved science and technology. And actually, when I was a little girl, my uncle, who was my brother, remember the complicated story there, if you were watching since the beginning, he used to get me up early in the morning to watch the Apollo missions go off, because nobody else would get up that early. They were like 5 or 6 in the morning. And I was little, and I had this little Bugs Bunny doll, and I'll forget, I loved it, my little Patty pajamas. And I was watching, and I thought, that's so cool. And then I think I was around 3, and I went, how do they do that? How do they do that? How do they get up there? How do they come home safely? How do they not die when they get back here and they crash into Earth? How does that work? And they say when you start asking how, that's when you become an engineer or a scientist, because you want to figure it out. And I just kept down that path, and someone suggested I, apply to MIT. I'm like, I'll never get in there. I got in. I'm like, wow, that's wild. Someone suggested I go for this Grumman scholarship. I was like, what's that? And I got it. So when people coach you and encourage you, go for it. If it's something good, go for it. And I just kept following that path. And I've always been a data person. I love information. I count tiles on ceilings. I'm like a savant, as they say. And so I was really good at math and science, all the way through school. I always loved it. I was skipped when I was younger because I keep wanting to do more. I still do homework all the time. I'm terrible, writing books or whatever. And data science started becoming a thing. And so they asked me to be on this board, and I said, okay, at the board. And then they asked me to run the place. So if you apply yourself and you learn, and you can learn how to teach other people about it and figure out how to do something good with it, then people want you to lead them. They really do. And so they asked me to run this. And then I looked around and I said, we should be bringing this to underserved students who don't know data science, who have no access to this, who aren't in school right now, who, God forbid there's a war, their schools are closed, or during the pandemic, there was one family, the father lost his job, the mother had just had twins or triplets, and so the daughter in college had to stay home to take care of the kids, or so her mother could go work and clean houses. And I was like, well, she can do this any time of the day. She could look at our content and she can learn while she's not in school. And so keep on looking at, I kept looking at what can I do to add value? And then I just keep going and I do what I love. So I write books on the weekend, and I'm on boards. I have a hard time saying no. That's one of my biggest issues. But I get really bored if I don't have like 3 to 5 things going on at any given time. I don't like TV. My husband wants to watch a movie. I'm like, blah, I want to do stuff. I want to use my brain. You know, I wake up 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, let me do Wordle, you know. So I'm always using my brain. So, but do what's good for you. And so I just kept going. And data science is such a huge field now because there's so much more data that people can get access to. Like years ago, it was behind a firewall and it was, ooh, in a data center, ooh, and you couldn't get access. Now it's all over the place. It's on your watch. There's Internet of Things devices. It's all over the internet. The data's everywhere. And so everyone has access and can do something with it now. So it was really obvious to me that this was going to be really important. Like when I was an aerospace engineer, people say, how'd you go from aerospace engineering to IT? I said, you know, I was an aerospace engineer. I worked at NASA, which is every rocket scientist's dream. I looked around, I said, you know what? I think computers are going to run the world someday. Good guess. And so I went to HP and then IBM. And then I started creating the Internet of Things strategy at IBM. Like, this is going to be bigger than what we do now. And they were like, no way. I'm like, yeah, way, you know, and so that's what I'm working on now, along with cybersecurity. So believe in yourself and just keep going. That's what I do.
Thank you. And we also love data and information here at the World Information Transfer. So you're in with like-minded people. So how did the COVID-19 pandemic and war in Ukraine affect your work? I know you worked on kind of like the COVID response program, but what other projects are you planning to pursue in the near future, and have these events impacted your choices?
Well, I think the war in the Ukraine has impacted everybody with a conscience who knows what's going on around the planet. And actually, one of my classmates from Princeton is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the United States. So I get to watch what he's saying all the time. We actually met with him in December before everything hit the fan. So I'm very connected and listening and watching. I don't have a lot I can personally do in any big way about it. I have a good color on today, I think, but we're all watching and thinking of what we can do. And I pray a lot for my classmate who has a front row seat from the US perspective, from the US side. Regarding COVID, you know, they called us and said, can you create a way for people to find COVID research? I'm like, absolutely, because I'm very collaborative. I love sharing. When everyone else is like this, I'm like this, you know, like let's share information and share ideas and help each other. So when they gave me the opportunity to create the COVID Information Commons, along with my colleague who was running this hub at the time, and I was just an interim executive director, we really jumped on it and we started bringing the humans together. That's one of the things that really helps things accelerate. You can get into the content. It's like, oh, here's a portal. It's like watching a movie. But then when you actually bring the humans together to think about it and to talk about it and to collaborate about making things better, you can really accelerate progress. So we created the portal, but then we created a community. We created this COVID Info Commons portal. We had a kickoff meeting. I expected like 25 people to come. 178 people came. I'm like, where did they just come from? You know? So there was a real hunger, a real thirst for this information and to work together. And so I asked 2 researchers to present. I begged them. 40 more asked to present. I was like, wow, now what do we do? So we created a monthly webinar series and we said, we'll keep doing this until nobody wants to do it. And that was over 2 years ago. So we keep doing it. And it's because we got the humans connected. We do a student paper challenge. So we're using the COVID pandemic as a way to increase researcher collaboration between National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, the students. Our student paper challenge is global. Anybody on the planet can participate in it. And so we use it for good. The other thing we've done is when we first created the COVID research portal, the KIC portal, we call it COVID Info Commons, it was just awards that were designated COVID. But now it's so expansive, you know, and there are technologies like mRNA vaccines that are very important in COVID, but we were doing research on years ago, but not related to COVID, right? So we've actually expanded the keywords we use so that you can get more information, kind of collateral information around it to encourage collaboration. And we're planning a COVID workshop next year. I'm thinking of having a topic in it about the confluence of multiple pandemics, because we have COVID, we have monkeypox growing, and we have polio again in the New York area. And so that's like a confluence of pandemics. That's not a good thing. So what I think we need to do is look at how we can identify when new ones are going to come. What's the impact of having these on top of each other? Do those impact us in a different way? What is that going to change for the human body, for existence, for society? So what we do is we really try to look at what the impact is of each of these things. And so those are, some of the things that we try to do.
Thank you. How can we potentially use data science and advanced technologies to help war survivors to recover or have a positive impact on areas and people who have been impacted by war, more specifically the Ukrainian-Russian war? Appreciate this is a very niche topic, but are you aware of any studies in this area or developments that may be of interest to the audience?
I haven't, and I'm very sensitive to this topic. And once again, everybody living through this and having pain and having lost people associated with this, I'm very sorry. It's a terrible situation. And so I'm not doing any specific work in it at this point. When you look at the Internet of Things, though, one of the things we're looking at is how you can use technology to gather data and then take action, right? So that they can use technology and sensors to figure out where things are and where people are and where there's a crowd happening or where there's technology that you think wasn't there. And so the Internet of Things is a technology that is really being used a lot and is growing. When you can tag things, there's sensing information, and there's actuation. Sensing is when you just find something out. Actuation is if you can tell the device to do something. So you sense and you actuate. So let's say that, there's something terrible in the air. It could be smoke, it could be some other type of thing, it could be a chemical. You can have sensors that actually can identify it. And then if there's a device that like an oxygen device, it can actuate the device, to make it safer for you, or a filter or something like that. So there's an opportunity to leverage IoT technology, and that actually doesn't take a lot of skill, so to speak. There are things like Raspberry Pis and BeagleBones and all these cute little technologies that you can actually use to power some of these sensing technologies, which is very cool. So you may actually be able to do some things. You could actually do student projects to try to figure some of that out. So those are some of the areas that I'm currently involved in, not specifically from the war perspective. I do know that the books that I have on tips for IoT, the trust, identity, privacy, protection, safety, and security, and tips for connected healthcare, I know that the government's very interested in that because they can hack transportation systems, cars, medical devices, and hurt a lot of people. And so the standards we're creating are to help in that situation. So that is one of the things that we're trying to do, so that the bad people, I won't say the bad guys because they could be any gender and they can be a robot, so that they can't make things worse. So that's one of the reasons we're doing that standards work.
It's fascinating. Thank you. What do you think advanced technology will look like in 10 years, and what new innovations can be present in the future? More specifically, do you think future technologies can affect standard of living in areas? Will they impact science, politics, or climate change?
Yes. And so I would say keep dreaming, keep thinking, and think of the things yourself, like this TIPPSS thing. I've had very senior people who said, what is that with all the letters? I'm like, oh, it's going to save your life and the lives of your grandchildren someday. So, find good ideas and keep going. Quantum technology will be deployed in new ways. We really, there are secret things going on with it that nobody will get to hear about. And then there are things like that quantum tunneling timer technology that I mentioned at Washington University in St. Louis that could be deployed for healthcare devices to make sure it hasn't been hacked. It's very precise. If you watch the video, you can learn more about it. So I think quantum technologies will be deployed more broadly. Like I said, any technology, just like any device, can be used for good. It could be used for bad. A car can get you to the hospital, or a car could drive over you you and make you go to the hospital, God forbid, right? So anything could be used for good or bad. But we're looking at quantum technologies, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and machine learning. The thing is to use it safely, securely, and without bias, and watch the ethics, right? So that's why we at the top of the Learner Central for the National Student Data Corps, we have data science ethics as the top one. I'm like, I don't care how professional you are or if you're just starting, ethics is the most important thing, because people decide what data they're going to use. They'll just ignore data, so I know men with breast cancer, breast cancer scares. A lot of the research is done with women because we tend to have it more, but a lot of the medical research is done by men for men about men, and so I'm like, but my temperature is like a whole degree lower than theirs. Why don't you guys think of that as a normal temperature, So they decide what data they want to use, and that could be used in any environment. So we want to make sure that they're using the data correctly, that they're checking their algorithms and updating them, and make sure they don't have bias and they're not doing things incorrectly. So you always have to check. It's just like double checking everything that you do. And we have to do that as we deploy the technologies. I think there'll be more extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality that will be used. I think that can change the academic environment, but they don't like when I say that. I mean, but just imagine if like Charlemagne could come into your room, and actually tell you what it was all about, or Napoleon or whatever, how cool would that be? So I think that there are going to be some cool ways to use technology for education, for society, for healthcare, and it's going to keep going. And so if you have a great idea, keep thinking and keep doing.
What difficulties and challenges are currently preventing the world from using advanced technologies to their full potential, in your opinion?
Well, knowledge, people don't know what to do with it. We have to be careful about, like, I know a lot of people think everything's in the cloud, but like the data really, the systems really have servers, and the servers really have chips, and the chips really have storage. And some people have just, sometimes I say, we talk about make America great again. I'm like, well, don't make America dumb again. Like, don't dumb it down. Make sure people are really learning the details. That's one of the things I think people aren't doing enough of. They just want to say, oh, it's in the cloud and I'll do this and I'll ghost them. And, I think we're in some situations, we're losing that clarity. And that's one of the reasons for this technical standard we're doing. It's going to be very technical all the way down to the trusted compute module and the chip in a device. I'm not letting anybody get away with anything. Like, we're going to talk about the firmware. Don't tell me firmware is an attack vector. It can also be a benefit, and they just want to like blow things off sometimes, and that's not going to help anybody. So that's the one thing that really disturbs me, that I run into everywhere. Doesn't matter what level people are, how much they know. So learn the details, get real is what I would say. That's one of the things that's a challenge. And then having the support to do it, that you have the time to do it, you have the money to do it, you can get the education. That's one of the reasons we have this open online data science education. Anybody can learn it. So what we want to do is make everybody aware of it, let you try it for free. And then if you like it, you can keep doing it in this environment. You could get a class, maybe you get a scholarship to go learn it somewhere else. And so the more you can make people aware, the more that they can grow.
Thank you. Given all of the global hackers we've been reading about in the news, how do you recommend we enhance data security, maybe both at a personal and an organizational level?
Oh, there's so much to do. So a lot of organizations have what we call a CISO or a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer. That's their job. And so if your organization doesn't have one, get one. There are organizations like CISA, like the organization that I actually had regarding the FDA recall of the pacemakers. There are organizations that actually have information that you can keep track of. There are actually information sharing and analysis centers, which are very closed groups, but they're for the top people in any given industry so that they can share the intelligence of what's going on. Use multi-factor authentication. I'm sure you have devices like that you try to get into a system and then, you know, it has to send a text to your phone, and then you have your phone, you have your laptop, the whole thing going on. So multi-factor authentication, so they make sure it's not just one rogue person somewhere that guessed your password, but that they have to have your device and they have to have your information. And don't trust anybody or anything. It's like, you know, what your mother would say to you before you went out when you were a teenager. Don't trust anybody. Even I know my husband, he'll click on something. I'm like, why did you click on that? How do you absolutely know that that was safe? So you just have to be very suspicious. That's what I say about cybersecurity. Be suspicious. Always be suspicious and validate before you get involved, and get an expert on your side to help you.
That's great advice. My dad would love your advice too. What are some ways your organizations are advancing women and people of color in engineering, medical, research, data science fields?
Well, in a lot of ways. So, you know, being a female aerospace engineer, very small club when I was an aerospace engineer. I was the only woman who graduated who didn't flunk out my year at Princeton as an aerospace engineer. I was the only one. I was involved with the Society of Women Engineers, and we used to tease that, well, not tease, the reality was the vice presidents, we could fit in a taxi cab. Like there were thousands of women, the VPs could fit in a taxi cab. So I keep bringing them with me and keep trying to help them grow. So the books that I do, Women Securing the Future with Tips for IoT and Tips for Connected Healthcare, I have one right here somewhere. You could have one. This is one of the recent ones. I don't know if you can see it. So I bring 17 women with me in each book. So I have 17 women authors in each book with me. So I bring them along. So now they're a published Springer author. When we do our data science career panels, I try to make sure that, I don't know if you noticed, but we have these flyers for the panels. I like half the faces to either be women or people of color. We don't say it out loud, but we do it on purpose. So when women or people of color look at it, they go, that looks like me, right? It's like the new Little Mermaid, right? That has an African-American mermaid, you know, and the little girls were like, oh my gosh, she looks just like me, right? You know, so that's what we try to do. We do it subliminally by making it a gazinta and baking it right in. And then we also, like in our data science career panels, we had a special panel for Women's History Month, and it was all women. The moderators were women, the panelists were women. We're doing the same thing for Hispanic Heritage Month, all Hispanic, Native Americans, and, you know, which is big in the US. And we're going to have those type of panelists and professionals. So what we try to do is put them out in front, have them lead by example, and make them role models. So we do that a lot. Actually, on my team at the hub, I'm a woman, and my operations manager is a woman, my NSDC program coordinator is a woman. And so it's good when we hire like just a few good men, they used to say in the Marines. We just hired a man, thank God, actually a few. We're hiring 6 more students this month. We can only hire Columbia students, just so you know, we can't pay others, but you can volunteer with the hub. So we validate them. A couple of key things I always tell them. I say, your opinion is we're very lucky to have you on this team because your opinion is very important for us. I always tell the students that. And so I tell them your opinion is very important to us. And I say, I want to hear what you have to say. And I tell them, if somebody acts like that's not true, you come and get me. So now, luckily, I'm at the stage that I've been around for a while, and I can kind of be the adult supervision. And so I can call people out on that stuff, you know, without them, they may not invite me back, but I can call, you know, I can call them out on that. And so I do, because you have to have somebody in your corner sometimes, you know, when you feel like you're all by yourself. That's why some of these organizations started, like the Society of Women Engineers. It started in 1950 with 50 women engineers who felt very alone where they were. They were very alone and very different. And they came together, and now there are like 20,000 people in the organization or something. And there are all these women VPs. It's amazing. You know, I look at the new panels, I'm like, oh, those young girls I used to work with, look, they're vice presidents now. So we validate is very important, and let them know how important they are. That's what I do.
Thank you. Could you please provide perspective on how blockchain can be leveraged to revolutionize and positively impact the healthcare sector?
Yeah. So I actually, being on the editorial board for blockchain and healthcare today, we think about this a lot. And I actually am involved in a number of programs where I review proposals and stuff about this. The thing that blockchain brings to the table, forgetting about cryptocurrency type stuff, is that it provides, as I mentioned, data sharing and data interoperability between organizations, institutions, departments, doctors, devices that don't have a central authority. So what I mean by that is, like, if you're within an organization, like if you're in the UN and you're trying to get data from somebody else in the UN, there's someone, you have a UN ID or whatever, and so you can get into it. But if you're from another location, not so much, that's not going to work out. But blockchain allows you to create these smart contracts to have agreements between different organizations. So when you do want to share data, you can, with the security and privacy that you built into the system. So we're looking at leveraging blockchain in healthcare for a few different reasons, or a few different ideas. One of the first ideas I worked on, gosh, it's probably about 5 years ago now, is we were looking at blockchain for clinical trials. How interesting is that? So one of the challenges we have with clinical trials is that it's hard to get enough humans to participate in it. But part of that is because if you're not working for a doctor affiliated with the clinical trials, you don't even know what's going on. So what we talked about was a way to use blockchain in multiple ways. So if you're going to deploy a blockchain in healthcare, it should be private permissioned. That's the way I look at it. That means it's very secure. If you have more than 51%, I'm going to get a little technical here, but if you own more than 51% of the nodes, people can't hack the blockchain. If you don't, somebody can get in there and actually fork it, and that's really bad. So you have to make sure you're architecting it in a very secure way. But then what you can do is you can have this very secure paradigm or architecture where the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors are working together, and maybe the FDA or the regulators in this permissioned blockchain. But then what if you wanted to go out and say, we want more humans to participate in this clinical trial? The vision that we had was that we can make it kind of like the Olympic rings, and you could have like overlapping circles. You could have this private permission blockchain for the medical people and the regulators, and you could have more of an open blockchain to get the word out that you're looking for people to participate in a clinical trial and actually attract more people to participate, increasing the statistical significance of the trial and potentially getting the medicine out faster. So those are some of the ways that we're looking to do it. We have a hub newsletter. We have a National Student Data Corps newsletter. We have a Covet Info Commons newsletter. You can sign up for those. If you go to the National Student Data Corps, just be confident. Go to the website, look around, find the Slack channel. I'm sure you can find it. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. We're planning an AMA, an Ask Me Anything event later this year. And so you can keep an eye on that. You can go to the Real Volunteer Form. That's on the website too. I was showing you on the NSDC, there's a Volunteer Central. If you go Northeast Big Data Hub volunteer, it should come up, and you can offer to volunteer and participate in our events. Our next event is on October 4th, Covet Info Commons webinar. And then we're going to have a National Student Data Corps webinar for Hispanic Heritage Month, the middle of October. Then we'll have another webinar in November. So we do them pretty often. So we encourage you to participate. Join the newsletter, become part of the hub. You'll automatically be part of the family. And especially in the Ukraine, God bless all of you. This is a very difficult time. I wish there was something I could do to help. But one thing we can do is we could help you learn data science so that when you go after your career, there are more opportunities open to you. So use the National Student Data Corps. You could create a chapter. It doesn't have to be like physical. It could be a virtual chapter. It could be a Ukraine chapter of the NSDC. That would be fine. So look at how you can leverage this information for good for you, for your community, and become part of the hub. Create an NSDC chapter, leverage our on-site, our online free resources. Let it help you. Let it help you. That's why we call this, data science and advanced technologies for good. It's for the humans. We have to protect the humans and help them.
Thank you, Florence. That is absolutely very, very correct. We really need to start thinking about what is going to happen with our future generations and help them to be able to live and take care of things the way past generations have taken care for eons to make this planet viable and to make the human beings what they are today. And so again, thank you very, very much. And Susie, thank you for hosting. Have a very good day and a very good week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.